Hello, everyone. Welcome to our discussion on Accelerate Business Results Driven Tech Strategy for 2025. I'm Alex Gorel, your host for today's session, and I'm thrilled to have each of you joining us. Throughout this exclusive webinar, we'll discuss the widening cost value gap in IT investments and how every investment should drive growth, urging business leaders to see IT as a value driver. You'll leave this session understanding how you can drive operational cost reductions to finance your next strategic initiative for innovation and market expansion. Before we get started, a few housekeeping notes. If you have any questions during the discussion, feel free to drop them in the Q&A and we'll address them at the end of the session. We'll be sharing a special offer to attendees, and you'll also receive access to this recording. I'd like to introduce our speakers. Tim Britt, Chief Executive Officer. With over 35 years of experience in management consulting, Tim began building Synoptic in 2001, now a full-service consulting and managed services business. Synoptic is Tim's direct response to the need for high-value consulting and managed services driven by results. By attracting and retaining top talent, project managers, consultants, developers, and engineers with a focus on an excellent customer service, Synoptic has grown multifold and realized Tim's vision in the communities it serves. Salil Godika, Chief Executive Officer, Synoptic India. With 28 years of experience in enterprise software product and IT services sectors, Salil's expertise in marketing, business development, and delivery helps link deep delivery expertise to service marketing and business development activities, while contributing to the overall growth of Synoptic's global business. His wide-ranging capabilities include P&L ownership, as well as functional experience in sales, marketing, corporate planning, M&A, product management, delivery, development, and alliances. I now invite Salil to get us started.
Thanks, Alex. And welcome everyone, and thank you for joining today. In this session, we will cover an important but sometimes overlooked topic, need for technology strategy. We will start by discussing what a tech strategy is, and more importantly, what it is not, and its criticality in transforming and accelerating your business. We'll explore why most organizations struggles in having such a strategy, the challenges this creates, and how it can hold you back. We'll outline, you will get to see some concrete steps for building such a strategy. And we'll also share how Synoptic can help your business craft and execute such a thing. So let's get started. What is this tech strategy essentially? In a nutshell, results-driven tech strategy focuses on aligning technology initiatives with measurable business outcomes. That's a simple thing, with the goal of achieving a future state vision. This approach, if you look at it, it essentially prioritizes achieving specific meaningful results. It could be increase revenue, specific cost reductions, improve customer experience, market expansion through the strategic use of technologies. It emphasizes agility, iterative improvement step by step, and continuous measurement to realize tangible value. So you might wonder, okay, so what does it entail? What does this, results-driven tech strategy entail? If I were to think of it, I would think it at the core of it is outcome-oriented decision making. Choosing technologies which are based on their ability to achieve specific goals. At the core of it is data-driven metrics, a culture of data-driven metrics. Use KPIs to track progress, measure success, change, so on and so forth. It's also about cross-functional collaboration right from the beginning, because one essentially engaging stakeholders from different groups to serve broader business strategy. And lastly, it's also about, I would say, building agile and scalable solutions. Let's say implementing systems that can adapt to changing business needs, because your businesses will change. Another way to look at it is what it is not. It is not technology for tech's sake, right? Hey, it's a shiny new toy. Let's adopt new tools or platform just because they are trendy or innovative without a clear link to business value. It's also not about doing one-off projects without alignment, deploying isolated IT projects because that's the need of the hour that time without knowing how they fit in the bigger picture. It's also not about over-engineering because a lot of tech people or a lot of people, a lot of business executives thinks complexity means good. Not really. And lastly, it's not about just top down to say this is the way it will happen without actually consulting the end users or the specific business line users. That's important to bring them in. So as you are thinking through all of these, there are three key levers that come in. One is your strategy should have focus, which is the results driven focus on outcome. It should be metrics based. Success is defined by measurable KPIs, and it should be aligned to the broader picture that you are trying to do. Seems simple, right? So what's the issue?
I was going to say, Salil, it seems very simple. I don't know why doesn't everyone have a great strategy and plan?
Oh yeah, well, wait till this is right, because I'm assuming all of us looking at this will say, yeah, yes, exactly. We all, organizations of all shape and form, are navigating an unprecedented convergence and perfect storm of these three critical things. Competitive pressures on one side, the demand for exceptional customer as well as employee experience on the other side, and then underpinned with this rapid technology advancements. It's an amazing, amazing confluence of all these challenges coming together. If you look at all our businesses and all the businesses that we talk to, that Tim and I actually, serve many times, we say they're facing intense competitive pressures. Global players are disrupting local markets. Price transparency exists, so it's putting extreme pressure on the margin. The pace of innovation is so fast. Everybody seems to be essentially introducing new products at any given time. And more importantly, non-traditional players seems to be entering traditional businesses and disrupting their supply chain, the way of doing business, and so on and so forth. So it's a difficult competitive landscape. And then now you look at it from a customer perspective, our customer's perspective, which is the enterprise customer. We all have got spoiled with the B2C way of doing things, right? We are saying, okay, I have demand for speed, rapid delivery of products, however complex the product is. I want hyper personalization. I want custom products to be tailored to my needs. I want omni-channel interaction. And all of this should be done in the cheapest way. So it's a tough one. And then if we look at it from an employee perspective, our employee base is changing so much. I don't think there is anybody we have ever seen such a change. On one side, we have this younger generation, which are of different expectation and demography. And many of our industries, let's say manufacturing, have aging workforce, which whatever one might say has got a lot of domain knowledge. And once they leave, there is a talent vacuum. So on one side, there is the Gen Z or whatever, the new generation. The other is the aging workforce, which is retiring and taking away a lot of domain knowledge, and overlay this with the hybrid work model. So how to make sense of all of these? And then the complexity doesn't stop. Then comes the pace of innovation, new technologies being talked about. What does that mean? Integration complexities. Legacy system often struggle to integrate modern tools. There is cybersecurity risk happening because of that. And last but not the least, what do I do with the data overload that's there? Everybody's saying, hey, do something with the data. What do I do? How do I make sense of what's relevant, what's not relevant? So this is really if we look at it, all these three things can't be looked at it in isolation. The interplay amplifies the difficulty. And together, I think they are creating a storm of complexity that businesses must address. And that's where the only answer is the results-driven strategies. Tim, you're saying some of these things?
You bet, Salil. Pretty much every company we walk into, they're trying to decide what to do with the rapid pace of technology change. At the same time, their processes, their people, their organization tends to change slower than the technology. And how do they enable organizational change? So those are some of the challenges. We're also seeing where everyone's trying to figure out what AI means for their business, right? So everyone's playing around with some different things, trying to understand the people impact, the business impact, and trying to think about how their business might, what their business might be like 4 or 5 years from now, if they fully leverage AI. So there's a lot of things going on, and I think all of these factors are playing out.
Yeah. So, then I would think, hey, Tim, this is a technology problem, right? But not really.
Yes, exactly.
This is deeply rooted in how businesses operate and strategize. This is a business problem, not a tech problem. It's not about these tools themselves. It is, how effectively they are integrated into the bigger picture. And these numbers, by the way, if we look at it, are staggering. And these are what we thought was we will actually just make sure that we look at what are the outside numbers. So we get a sample of various different ones. And we thought we'll just show this. Companies that align with IT, that align IT with their business objectives, outperform their peers significantly, almost 2x. And digital transformation is no longer an optional thing. It's a necessity and directly correlates with shareholder value. If we were to think of it in a competitive landscape, lagging on digital transformation isn't just about, hey, I just missed the opportunity, I'll get on with it. It actually is actively eroding the value of your business. And look at from a strategy perspective, the lack of clear IT roadmap often leads to inefficiencies that hurt the organizations deeply. Look at this. Imagine a fragmented or misaligned system can impact productivity by as high as 40%. And the data which is showing that simplifying IT, on the other hand, can unlock innovation, streamline operations. But the challenge is yet many businesses struggle to prioritize this approach. That's really the interesting part. So I think the answer here is clear that without a cohesive strategy, digital tools become a burden really. And then we all talk about, hey, how it's a failed thing and so on. Strategic clarity ensures that technology drives rather than, drains value. And lastly, obviously, cost is an important thing. So we think it's all about cost and so on and so forth. And complexity is about cost, but not really. There is an underlying problem. The risk tied to complex IT systems are significant. A more complex IT stack requires, it just opens your exposure to data breaches, which are not just, you would say disruptive, not disruptive. They can be, if I were to say, devastatingly expensive. So really, it is about simplifying the tech stack and building integrated ecosystem for safeguarding really your long-term stability. So, as Tim and I have discussed and all of that, we think that the key to tackling these challenges is really lies in embedding technology into the DNA of the business strategy. That's when it will happen, not think of it as an afterthought. So again, we say, well, okay, seems straight enough. Why don't we do it? So at least what we are seeing from our customer base, and I think Tim sees a lot of some of these things. So Tim, you should jump in. But this is starts with what's the barrier? Really, barrier is there is lack of alignment on business vision. We talk about it a lot, but leadership is not aligned on some of these objectives. And without that, that's a key dependency in establishing a tech strategy. And then we are talking about technology proliferation, right? It's so simple. Everybody will go in, take some SaaS and pass, and hey, I'll just go build it. I'll solve the problem. Looks good in short term. But what it is not integrated. It doesn't fit into the cohesive company vision and leads to all this kind of tech sprawl. One of the things we actually have seen, and I wanted to bring this up, was a good companies, the successful companies, what they do is they embed business people along in their technology groups. Because it's not like the technology guy many times doesn't understand. And business guys are not supposed to understand each of these. So embedding that which is when we say the skilled resources, skilled meaning business skilled resources, have to be embedded right up front. There is an interesting thing. I mean, we have obviously, there is a impression that there is and what we call here perceived lack of budget. Hey, I don't have the budget to drive all these new things. Where will I drive from? We hear this a lot. But when you peel the onion, you'll realize that many times that's why we have used the word quote unquote perceived. They actually have the money. It's just that we are putting it in a lot of other places, because much of these ROIs will, these projects will automatically pay themselves back by doing all of this stuff. And then obviously there is a chaos and firefighting and so on and so forth that comes in. So and Tim, you see a lot of this thing, right? Because you talk to different prospects, customers in different stages. What are some of the key barriers?
It's super interesting. I can't emphasize, this is just fresh on my mind because I was on a call yesterday with a leadership team, and they were talking about their business objectives for this large scale platform modernization they were doing, where they're replacing their ERP and all their supply chain systems. And there was a debate about changing from more of a make to order environment to a make to inventory environment so they could reduce waste. But then part of the team felt they would have challenges forecasting and might have incur a lot of inventory. So having these business discussions, we can help the technology do the forecasting, but if the business isn't there with you and aligned on what the objective is the objective to kind of streamline supply chain, or is the objective to reduce waste, right? Those are two sometimes competing elements, and that can cause a project to make poor decisions along the way and then ultimately not achieve the outcomes for the business. So I think that getting aligned on what you're trying to accomplish is a huge thing when you're developing your tech strategy. Then a lot of these things, one of the things we were talking about earlier, the fact that people change fast, much slower than the technology does. We can get the technology implemented pretty quickly, but the hard part is getting the people to work differently, right? Change what they're doing today to what they're going to be doing in the new environment. And that takes a lot of buy-in along the way, a lot of participation in the process. So there's a lot of things that prevent companies from really pulling together a great strategy and plan. And sometimes it's unclear who owns the tech strategy, right? Who is responsible for it? And so nobody on the leadership team takes initiative, or they think it's the IT department that should do it. And sometimes they're just not sure, organizations just aren't sure how to go about creating it, what a good one looks like. So there's a lot of reasons that organizations don't have great technology strategies that they're aligned behind.
Yeah. So before we, get into a little bit more detail on how we see this, what are the specific actionables and frameworks you could use to fix this, I thought we'll just touch upon the tech predictions, just a little bit on it. And, obviously no presentation today will be complete if I don't use the word Gen AI and all of that, right? So I got to use it. So here it is, the customary one. But the interesting thing is I want to talk a little bit about how we see within that, what 2025 and ahead would be. Obviously, Gen AI will evolve from this general purpose model to highly specialized model, which are specific for industries like healthcare, finance, education, and so on and so forth. We will be using Gen AI for, say, designing custom drugs, generating specific financial insights, and so on and so forth. It's also about, in future, we are seeing already, is the multimodal capabilities in Gen AI, which will integrate text, images, audio, video, and all. But think of it as if conversational AI, where I'm doing, but it is also narrating with the help of video, visuals, audio, and so on and so forth. Gen AI will keep getting embedded into the edge computing side of things, just so that from all our IoT devices to all the smart stuff and so on and so forth, quick action gets taken. So we see this happening right now as we speak. So all that is going on. Obviously, we are using, just like anybody else, we are using that for our software development processes, delivery processes, automation, and so on and so forth. We are, essentially consuming all those things for ourselves. But the interesting thing that we think which was happening from an enterprise perspective, very quickly it will happen, is the agentic AI. Essentially, that agentic AI system is essentially it's unlike traditional AI models, this is something which actually takes actions on its own. It doesn't just simply respond to prompt or execute predefined tasks. Agentic AI can make decisions, it can plan actions, and even learn from experiences, all in the pursuit of an objective that you have given. For example, if I say, okay, go build this website, it will do all the associated 10 steps and go build it. And this is where real good things and interesting thing for all of us in enterprises will happen. It is advancing very, very quickly because of technologies like reinforcement learning, the edge AI we talked about, the modular architecture that's happening. We are already seeing things like digital twins in manufacturing or self-improving systems in customer service. And then there will be hybrid models of all of these that are emerging. So this is where really the business objective merges with the agentic AI, because there will be very, very, very specific thing. As you look at all of these things, obviously one of the important thing is that these things are underpinned by 3-4 of the levers that we already talk about, right? Data governance and analytics, it's in mainstream now. The automation, the intelligent automation that we've been doing it for last few years, the integration complexity that I talked about, which these solutions have to work through different one, and the security infrastructure that needs to be there to support all of these. Important thing is, again, going back to the flavor, for these to be successful, please do not ignore use case alignment. If you are going to deploy one of these, say, agentic AI and so on and so forth, without alignment to business, it will result in solutions that won't add measurable value. Maybe I'll just do some low value, low priority tasks. Also, we can't underestimate the scalability issues that come in, the amount of data that's needed to train it. There is also a hidden cost of integration here that one needs to take into account. There is a cost one needs to take into account. It's essentially, and one has to go to the ones which have got very rich APIs. And lastly, this is not about I just do it and it works. I have to monitor and have close feedback loops in it so that I can continuously improve it. Those are some of the things that one needs to be aware. If I were to summarize this, as we look at Gen AI and agentic AI, one has to think with purpose, with proper governance, and with alignment to business goal, while it is still addressing issues related to integration or security and workforce readiness. So that's where some of the thing is. Now, what I thought was, what we will do is we'll now discuss how we actually go about building tech strategy. And this is from ground up, having done, probably hundreds of such projects and initiatives and so on and so forth. So I'll request Tim to actually jump in that.
Sure. Thank you, Salil. I liked your slide there with the data as an underpinning of AI, right? We're all excited about AI, but without the data, it doesn't work. So we have to have a good data strategy. Well, why don't we jump into this? I think the big question a lot of organizations ask is, how do I create a great strategy? And first of all, I can't tell you the number of organizations we walk into and they don't have a technology plan. They're spending millions of dollars on their technology and their annual technology investments, but they don't have a plan. It's like building a building without a blueprint, and it really just leads to inefficiency, waste, lack of alignment. So let's talk a little bit about how we go out about building a plan, and kind of get into the color commentary on that. So first of all, just big picture, as Salil talked about, getting aligned on the objectives. What is the organization trying to do over the next 2 to 3 years? And I can't tell you the number of times we go into an organization and the first step is go in, interview all the key executives and ask them, what are the objectives of this organization and how does your area contribute to those objectives? And then how does technology help you do that? We get completely different answers. And it's a really great meeting, that first meeting when we all come back together, report out kind of the key findings, key initial observations. And we see that 3 or 4 people in the organization have different views of what the objectives are, how important certain objectives are, and what the barriers to accomplishing those objectives. So you have some great discussions during this process. And then you start looking at the gaps that are causing that you have to achieve those objectives, how you enable those objectives, and then you start looking at solutions, implement and execute, and then measure, right? So this just talks about this overall process of developing a strategic plan, executing, and then measuring. And it's a living, your strategy, your technology strategy is a living document. It's a living plan, right? You need to take it out once or twice a year, update it, review it on a regular basis with your leadership team and all the stakeholders responsible for executing it. So let's kind of jump into a little bit. The first key point is just recognizing where your organization is. We always say different organizations start in different places, right? You may be in an environment where there hasn't been a lot of technology in a while. You've got aging infrastructure, aging applications, and there needs to be some stabilization and optimization, some building of a foundation before you can get to more growth or differentiating initiatives. On the other hand, maybe you have a strong foundation, you've got the basics taken care of, and you're ready to kind of start down a path that's differentiating or drives growth or changes the way you operate relative to your competitors or enables a different customer experience. So that it depends a lot where you are today. And so we always start with that when we're developing a plan. So let's just talk about a methodology. This is a methodology we use at a very high level. There's a lot of activities you do during each stage. And you kind of have to right size this depending on the size of your organization, like how big is your organization? How many stakeholders have to be talked to? Like how many systems do you have? So this could be for a smaller organization, this could be a 6 to 10 week process. For a very large organization, this could be a 6-month process, right? So it depends a little bit how the size and scale and diversity of complexity in your organization. But in general, a couple things. One is you have to kind of get a plan to get a plan, right? And mobilize the project. And it's really important to think about the stakeholders in your organization that are participating in the project. You want to pull in key business leaders, technology leaders, business stakeholders, get them participating, talk to them about the purpose, create a little bit sense of urgency on why it's important, and get executive sponsorship for building a really great technology strategy. Then, like I mentioned, in each of these phases, you try to create some discussion along the way, because one of the most important elements of this process is getting everyone's buy-in and also having a lot of discussion along the way so you get alignment. And so you have to create opportunities to do that. So there's some formal ones at key decision points, and we call those like a steering committee meeting or a task meeting where you're seeing the results of the last phase, making decisions before proceeding to the next phase. There's also some working sessions along the way where everyone has to get together and you really work through some key challenges, work through priorities, talk about where you want your business to be in 2 to 3 years, and how you want technology to enable those results. So then we jump into discovery. That's really just going out and talking to the business, talking to each of the stakeholders, asking them what they believe the objectives are, what the priorities are, where their big gaps are from a process and technology perspective, and then kind of documenting that. And we usually do that by documenting the as-is business processes, the technology that support those processes, the infrastructure, and kind of just look at the current state. That kind of tells us how solid is the foundation, how secure is it, how well are the current business processes being supported, are those processes changing? Is there anything going on in the industry that's changing the environment? So then that gives it the kind of baseline. We also look at emerging changes where there is change. What are those new requirements that are driving new technology needs? So then we kind of step into an analysis state. And we start saying, okay, if we had to think about the future, a couple of years out, 2, 3 years out, what is our vision for that future state? And that's a holistic vision. Like, how do we want the different areas to interact? How do we want information to flow? What is our most valuable information in our organization that enables us to be differentiated and operate effectively, make good decisions? And there's usually multiple options for what that future state looks like. And we try to take a few different visions and put them out there to get people challenging each other, talking about, are we going to be a product innovator, or are we going to be a value driver, right? And those are two very different things, and different processes are important in those two, with those two strategies, and therefore different systems are important, different technology is important. So we have those discussions, and then we start aligning on that future state. And then the final step is this roadmap and delivery. How do we get this done? Like, what are those foundational things that have, and then what are the next things we can do after that? We get those dependencies knocked out of the way, and we build out a sometimes as short as 18 months, because this stuff is changing fast. Sometimes it's a 3-year plan, right? Because it's not changing as fast as one might, as the technology is changing. So those are some things we think about and how we approach this. A couple really important things. It's really important to communicate out to your organization, document the decisions along the way, document the strategy in a way that you can pick it up and review it periodically, quarterly, a couple times a year. Make sure that everyone's bought in, having those meetings between the meetings to just get informal feedback and input, things that some people might not say in the formal meetings. These are some of the sorry about that. My screen glitched for a second there. Some of the deliverables and artifacts that are produced over the course of this, like you might get a current state business process, current state business application blueprint, a current state infrastructure diagrams. You start highlighting those issues and risks and gaps, and then you start looking at that future state. Here's some examples where you take the key business processes, where are the gaps, how do we fill in the gaps with the applications, or consolidate applications, or modernize applications to better support that future state, and then how do we implement that over time? We put a couple of case studies in here that I think are interesting to talk about. These are companies where we worked with them to build effective strategies. And I know So we'll see a lot of these as well. And usually there's multiple drivers, right? In this case, this was a transportation and logistics organization. It's an industry that is increasingly information dependent. And the information is flowing between the shippers, the carriers, and the destination organizations. And timing and efficiency is becoming increasingly important. Scheduling is important. So it's going through a massive digital transformation where all of this is being done online. A lot of it's being done in a more automated way, using AI, using rich data sets. So capturing data from all sorts of sources to operate more efficiently. So this case, this organization had an objective to scale, digitally transform all of their processes. So basically they were doing less things with paper, and there was more data exchange between organizations, and really importantly, more automation, leveraging AI, finding the right carrier for the right load in an automated way, and then sourcing that carrier in an automated way. So they built out a plan for what that future state vision was and began investing in it. In the meantime, there were some industry challenges, so they had to get really smart about how they did it from a cost effective way. And this is a really important element. It's not just about spending more money. It's about spending money in a strategic way and doing it in a smart way, right? So you don't have a lot of waste. You don't burn through the investment that you're trying to make, and then not get to where you're going. So this organization has become one of the largest transportation logistics organizations in North America, and are largely built out a digital platform that they're moving all of their operations to, and now they're about halfway through the consolidation of legacy systems onto this new platform. That all came out of a technology strategy and plan, and there's still 2 or 3 more years to go on that. This is a similar organization, different challenges. This is an organization that was highly dependent on imports. Forecasting and supply chain management were very important. They had fragmented systems that didn't communicate. Product development was really important because they won by introducing innovative snack food products that tended to grow at hyper growth levels. And the key for them was integrating their systems, automating, and better managing their supply chain so they could scale. And they believed they could increase their business by about 150 to 200% over a 3 to 5 year period. So they developed a plan to essentially put a solid foundation in with a new modern cloud-based ERP, overlay analytics on top of that, and have a best-in-class product development system that enabled them to develop products quickly, efficiently, and in a collaborative way, and then fulfill them with an efficient supply chain to achieve their scalability. And they're about, these guys are interesting because during the pandemic, they were growing like gangbusters, and they were having to do this quickly. It slowed down a little after the pandemic. And so they had to kind of right-size their plan and redo their plan, right? So these plans are living and they're breathing, and you have to continuously update and kind of maintain an 18 to 36 month outlook. It's an example of an execution plan from one of these types of strategies. Again, you get down to There's a lot of detail behind this, resource plans, investment over time. We also like to measure the results achieved over time. Did we reduce those costs? Did we reduce the waste? Did we reduce the inventory? Did we achieve the greater sales? A couple things really quickly here, and I want to get to Q&A here, but I think this is a key important element as you go through this process. And just to give you a picture, like usually you've got 3 or 4 leadership team members, a few stakeholders within the organization, subject matter experts that are all feeding into this strategy development. And you're doing work in between steering meetings, you're coming and presenting the findings at each stage, the plans at each stage, and everyone's getting aligned, and you're getting buy-in to the overall strategy. But there's some key things that make it successful or not successful. Number one, you have to have leadership commitment. Executive sponsorship, usually have 2 or 3 of the leadership team members involved because it touches everyone, right? If the worst case scenario is everyone does their own technology plan, the systems don't work together, information doesn't flow through the organization, and it doesn't all work together in one cohesive ecosystem. So you really need that leadership commitment to building a cohesive, integral plan that's aligned with your business. You have to continuously adjust it. Things are changing, right? The business is changing, the market's changing, technology is changing. So you have to be willing to make changes along the way. The third thing is integration. It's often overlooked. It's really important to think through how the systems in your tech ecosystem, your future state vision, integrate and ensure that they information flows in your organization. A big component of this is having a great team, having people that have been in there, done this before, that can orchestrate this process, facilitate and enable your organization to go through this and get aligned. And then finally, this whole governance thing, right? How do you manage it over time? It's not something you just put on a shelf and forget about. You need to have a team that comes together that represents different parts of the organization and reviews it and updates it on a regular basis and processes for doing that. So those are some of the key success factors that we've seen over time. Salil, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think these are, just the way we have as such done it, and what Tim was describing was that this is a process. This whole thing is a process. So this is why one might think it's so difficult. It's just the challenge is if we don't follow the process, then the result doesn't come out. So if each of these parts do their job, if you will, we have seen results come out around all these 5 levers and as well as the process that describes. Many times where we have seen the pitfalls happen is when that process is not followed, or we think it's not needed and so on and so forth, or some parts become afterthought. So one is a process, and second is what it says is continuous monitoring is key. We like to think of it in one way. The technology strategy is when you are trying to invest for adaptability, not permanence, because it will not be permanent. So invest for adaptability, continuous monitor it, and know that it will not be permanent.
Thanks, Salil. I think one point that's really important is this process brings people together that may not talk on a regular basis. And so you get some really healthy discussions. People learn about how other parts of the organization operate and downstream impacts of things that happen in their part of the organization. And it just that has its own benefit, right? And so
I think that's a great point.
Good exercise.
That's a great point. And we can't tell you, in so many of these projects, we have seen this, the aha thing goes on when these 4 people would, and it's like, hey, they were around, but we just didn't talk. So it's elementary sometime, but missing.
It's great. So the question is, if you don't have a great technology strategy and plan, and it's not, sometimes that an organization has one, it's just in the closet and nobody knows about it, right? The key to this is you have a technology strategy and plan that everyone knows and is aligned behind, right? So that way you don't have different parts of the organization going out and buying this technology and that technology, and this one doesn't talk to that one. And, and everyone's kind of operating in their own little silo. This is building this integral, cohesive strategy and plan. And the question is, why act now? What, if it doesn't exist, why should you take a step to make it happen? Number one is the technology is changing rapidly, right? And it's becoming so important to all organizations. It's the whole thing. Every company's a tech company, right? So you have to have a great technology strategy and plan. The building market momentum and competitive advantage. If you don't do it, someone else is going to do it, right? Thirdly, our customers and our employees expect great systems, right? The generation that's coming along to replace me, grew up with these systems. They grew up with great systems, better systems and applications than most of us have in our business. And when they step into the working world, they expect the systems to work. They expect them to be easy to use, and they expect great technology. So it's really important. So I think but the most important thing is to get alignment on your long-term strategy, and it has the potential to be just a fantastic unlocking of value for your organization and unlocking of momentum that you may not be able to imagine right now. Well, we do this a lot. We actually enjoy just talking about it and talking to people about it and helping organizations make this a reality, really put a strategy in place that changes the way they do business over time. It makes them more competitive, leads to growth, and leads to success for everyone. We'd love to talk to all of you and help you start this process. We routinely do like what we call envisioning sessions, which is sort of like just a mini discussion to talk about where you are today, facilitate a discussion across key stakeholders, what the objectives are, what the big gaps are. It sort of condenses everything we just talked about into a very simple discussion that kind of tells you whether you need to invest more in building out a strategy and plan. So anyway, it's a great way to facilitate what the art of the possible, what you might be able to do with your organization if you all got aligned and leverage technology to its fullest potential. And with that, I think we're coming to an end here, and I think we're going to take questions and answers. Is that correct, Salil?
Yes, I think also if you get a chance, please also respond to that poll, please.
So far, you guys are easy.
Alex, you are on mute.
And I'll just jump in here. There is a poll. Go ahead and respond to that if you're interested in the workshop now, and you can also take advantage of it later when we reach out. But we'll take some questions. There are a few that have come in, so I'll just share those with you, and we can kind of have an open discussion over the time that we have left. For those of you who would like to ask additional questions, just go ahead and use that Q&A. Thanks for those who already put those questions in. All right, let's see. What metrics do you recommend for measuring the direct impact of technology investments on business outcomes?
That is that's a very good question. We believe that, first of all, you're looking for two things. One, it's more than one metric. It's usually a few different metrics, depending on the business. But it is usually a business metric with very specific impacts of technology identified. So, for example, I'll give the supply chain example I was just discussing at the beginning of the call. They decided they measure waste, right? It's a make to order environment, and they measure waste, and they don't have a lot of inventory because they make everything to order. And that discussion was all about your question. What metrics are we trying to drive? And they were talking about going to more of a make to produce and or make to inventory. And they realized they were going to have to expand the metrics that their business was tracking today. And so on the waste part, they believe that by putting in certain technology capabilities that allowed them to forecast and plan their production better, they could run bigger and better planned production runs, and they could reduce the waste, right? But they could only do that with technology. So they set that as one of the metrics. The second thing that they'd had is they'd had a lot of outages, right? They'd had some key systems that were legacy systems that were causing disruption in productivity. And so they're also measuring some just basic IT systems around uptime, availability, which then they said that affects workforce productivity. And so they're also measuring revenue per employee to tie to that. So it's a discussion of what metrics should be measured, and it's usually unique to the business and what's important to your strategy. So, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that's it. What the key point is, it's not one, and it goes back to what the question was. It has to be tied to your business objective, and business objective varies. It could be financial, it could be customer, it could be operational, it could be X, Y, and Z. And lastly, it better be measurable. There has to be a quantification, because if it isn't, then it's a problem.
Thank you. So I'm just going to kind of summarize this one. With the fast pace of technological change, how can we manage risks associated with early adoption or lagging behind?
Yeah, that's a great question, actually. And we continue to see this, like, hey, should I be an early adopter? What's the risk? Should I be a late one? What's the risk? And these are different dimensions. So let's say if you are an early adopter, what do you need to do? You have to look at conducting proper due diligence, right? Because you have to know much more. You are the one who are doing actually more due diligence versus others haven't done it. Follow a process of proof of concept. Pilot the technology on a small scale. Prioritize adaptability, because when you are doing an early adopter, you better be much more, adaptable, if you will, kind. Flexible contracts, that also comes in the picture, right? You will have to think of having contracts which has exit clauses. And lastly, you have to strengthen risk management, especially in an early adopter. You have to look at scenario planning, contingency planning, plan B, plan C's, and so on and so forth. Now let's look at a situation where you are late, you want to lag behind, and you want to, take it from that perspective. The biggest thing is you got to stay informed. It has to be a informed decision to do something late. Invest much more in competitive benchmarking, because you could learn from others. Engage the ecosystem, participate in industry forum and so on and so forth to see, okay, this is what people are doing. I'm waiting, but I'm waiting for a little bit more. Especially from a lagging, if you are in that laggard kind of thing, then you have to build a much more agile culture, because I need to, when I do pivot, I need to pivot fast sometime. And partnerships become much more important because the ecosystem helps you in accelerating when you do decide to jump in. So I think it's both have got different dimensions. Both have got their own risks. Underlying thing is the same: business goals orientation, and then invest in what we call it modularity, if you will, kind modular architecture, and so on and so forth. So maybe I would summarize it that have a mindset of strategic experimentation, right? Position as an organization to say whether it's before or after. I'm always open for that strategic experimentation with measured, informed steps. Tim, what do you think? What do you see?
I
And
think
we see both kinds of people.
I think you're right about all that, Salil. I think one thing I would add is in the world of agile methodology and adaptability, we tend to take action fast, right? We tend to move fast. And you get different parts of the organization all moving fast, and sometimes they're moving fast in different directions. I think that's a great mindset to have if you have a broad plan that provides guidance so that all of that activity is happening aligned with the broader plan. And so you don't just get people going in different directions for conflicting reasons, because then I think you can consume a lot of resources, a lot of cost, and cause a lot of risk without, so it's sort of working smart within a master plan.
So with the time we have left, I'm just going to combine a couple of the questions that came in, and then for those of you, we'll get back to you separately as we follow up. But essentially, it's around kind of optimization and kind of determining, prioritizing between kind of customer-facing technology innovations and the back-end operational improvements, and then some other questions around like optimization. But let's go with that initial question. About,
I'm sorry.
yeah, how should they prioritize between customer-facing technology innovations and then back-end operational improvements?
Yeah. Well, first of all, it's always a balance, right? If you've got disruptive change in customer experience in your industry, like I see this in healthcare right now, right? A lot of healthcare organizations are focusing on patient experience, and some of them are leapfrogging forward, and so that's forcing the whole market to focus on that, and maybe reduce focus on that on the back end operations. So it's always a little bit of balance, and that's part of assessing the competitive landscape and assessing what your big bottlenecks are. The one other thing I would add to that is a key guiding principle is to simplify. The more simple, the more essential and simple you can keep your technology ecosystem, the more you'll be able to optimize it and hopefully invest in both the customer experience and the back office operations. If you've got a really complex environment with a lot of different platforms, they all have to talk to you. It starts weighing you down, and you don't have the resources to invest in improvements, either in customer experience improvements or back office operations improvements. So I think the overriding theme is to try and have a solid vision that is simple.
Perfect. Thank you, Tim and Salil, for such an engaging conversation, and everyone who's participated in today's session on Accelerate Business Results Driven Tech Strategy for 2025. We shared how tech strategy can accelerate your business and why it's important, along with steps for building a results-driven technology strategy and plan. Do take advantage of the envisioning workshop. It's a great opportunity in assessing and accelerating your tech strategy. You can scan that if you missed that poll, but we will be connecting with you after this webinar with resources and next steps related to today's discussion. So until next time, thank you, take care, and have a wonderful day.
Thanks a lot, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, Salil. Thanks, Alex.
Thank you.